Hello, I just want to briefly go over this week's slides. Please understand that just because I'm talking about something, it does not exclude the other information that is in the slides, but these are areas that I feel it's important for you to really understand. So, first off, body growth. Understand that from birth through 2 years old, this is the most rapid growth span for child development. There are two ways that the child grows. The first is cephalocaudal, and the other is proximal distal. Proximal distal is basically from is the arms and legs. Typically the arms and the legs will grow in length, and then the hands and feet will catch up. So they may have longer arms and longer legs, but yet their hands and feet will still be smaller. The other is cephalocaudal, and that is when you first notice, when baby is born, their heads are very large compared to the rest of their body. Helps with birth. But as they start progressing motor skill wise, if you think of the image of a 2-year-old, they're very top heavy, large head, smaller body. But after they've hit 2 and they transition into toddlerhood, into preschool, their bodies will catch up to their heads. So the growth of the head will slow down by about 2 years of age, and the rest of the body will begin catching up. So a good way to just demonstrate that is if you look at this slide and at the pictures, we have 2 children, and it has pictures of them from newborn up to 22 months of age. And if you look, you don't see a lot of change in the size of their head. A good one is look at Chris at 7 months, look how large his head is in comparison to his body. And then by 22 months, he started to grow into his head. So, a big thing about growth and development is no 2 children grow exactly alike. There's group differences, individual differences, and then skeletal age. Group differences are standard differences you would expect to see. The obvious difference between a male and a female. And that difference is the same with every male and female. And then ethnic differences. If someone has an Asian background, you would expect to see a different skin tone, different structure around the eyes, versus someone born into an African American background. Individual differences, you can have 2 African American children sitting side by side, and they're both going to be very unique. Skeletal age is another way of looking at physical maturity, not developmental maturity. And they'll do x-rays, and they look at where the growth plate is in each of the long bones, and then they determine how much new growth is evident to help determine physical age. And this is cephalocaudal, proximodistal, as I've already explained. Okay, neurons and connective fibers, you need to understand what a neuron is, understand how neurons communicate with each other, and this is through synapses. This is where information jumps across the gap. And the chemicals that help with that information transmitting are called the neurotransmitters. Something you do want to understand is that if a certain area is not being used, then that synapse may get closed off. It's called pruning. So that's why early stimulation of all areas is important with the newborn and the growing infant toddler, because their brains are so plastic right now, and they're absorbing everything and learning everything much faster now than what they would as an adult or an older child. So what are methods for measuring brain function? An EEG is a very common one. It's an electroencephalogram. What this is what you typically think of if somebody in a science lab with a bunch of wires hooked up to their head They use paste and they glue these wires onto your scalp, and there is a grid sheet that shows where you should be putting certain wires, which connects to where the section of the brain that's being monitored. And what it monitors is brain waves. Then we have magnetic resonance imaging, and this can indicate areas of high activity or low activity. Positive emission tomography, PET scan, can also indicate areas of high activity or low activity. Take away from this what an EEG is and you should be fine. This is just a diagram to help you connect where different areas are and how they may contribute to development. I will let you read through this stuff. One area you do want to understand is left hemisphere and right hemisphere. In the right hemisphere, this impacts the child's spatial abilities, negative emotions, and then processing. And this is global or entire picture type processing, whereas the left hemisphere impacts the child's verbal abilities, their positive feelings, positive emotions, and then sequential or analytical processing. So, for instance, hopefully most of us are aware of the old white little cone, and you stacked donuts on top of it by color and progressive size. That would be a left hemisphere picture. Right hemisphere may be more of a puzzle to get to the large picture. So brain plasticity. In brain plasticity, the hemispheres have already started to have their areas of specialization. A highly plastic cerebral cortex means there is a very high capacity for learning. So that is what it means when you say something is plastic or plasticity. It can take in a lot of information. It's easily adaptable, which increases that learning capacity. Another thing to understand and remember is that at this young of an age, and if a portion of the cortex is damaged, other areas will take over the task of that cortex. So it's amazing. It gives our infants such a good chance at still developing normally and having a healthy adult life. Sensitive periods in brain development, and this is why there's certain toys that should be introduced at certain ages. Read through this section. Just keep in mind that every child is a little bit different, and instead of specific ages or months, we now have ranges when it's ideal to introduce those things. Sleep-wake pattern. When they're first born, they don't necessarily have a set sleep-wake pattern, and it certainly isn't set a night-to-day schedule. As they progress through their first year, they will start to transition to the night-day schedule, and a lot of that is through I'm blanking out on the word there, but the night to day, the normal urge to sleep when it's dark and to be awake when it's light. By age 2, total sleep time will decline from 18 to 12 hours per day. That means their nap times will be reduced, or if they still take the same number of naps per day, they'll be much less. Like, for instance, I used to love when my 2-year-old would take a 3-hour nap in the afternoon, and how sad I was by the time he was 3 that he was only napping for 45 minutes. But he had a lot to do, and he was a very curious child. But he was sleeping longer at night. Right. So what are some influences on early growth? You want to read closely in your chapter. Make sure you understand how heredity will influence early growth. Really look at the nutrition, breastfeeding versus bottle feeding. Breastfeeding has its benefits. Commonly, in the first year of life, though, on a baby who's breastfed, they will have a slower weight gain than a formula-fed baby. It doesn't mean that they're underweight, they just have a slower weight gain. With bottle feeding, they have found that infants who bottle feed have a higher risk for ear infections and upper respiratory infections. And part of that is the position that they're in when they're taking the bottle versus the position they're in when they're breastfeeding. Plus, it also has to do with mom's antibodies that she is passing through the breast milk. And then review malnutrition. Know what the different types of malnutrition are. There will be a couple test questions over this. Mostly like general overall malnutrition, prenatal malnutrition, and postpartum malnutrition. So there's your types of malnutrition: marasmus, kwashiorkor, and food insecurity. So you'll want to know what those three types are. And then we've already learned in the first chapter when we talked about Pavlov, the steps of classical conditioning. But again, just be familiar with what an unconditioned stimulus is and a conditioned stimulus is. Okay? Okay, so infants are born with a set ability to imitate. That's where they will try to make the same faces as their parent will. That's typically if you're in a checkout line at a grocery store and there's a baby in front of you looking over mom or dad's shoulder. If you smile at them, they'll smile back at you. It is that innate nature to imitate. And it's also how they can learn. Okay, I'm going to pause there at motor development, and I will come back to it in a different video.